Meanwhile, calls for storm aid package right now, which could be in the offing sooner rather than later. Congressman Randy Weber joining us right now. Congressman, where does that stand for the time being? Do you know?
Well, Neil, we've been to all the shelters here throughout the area. We're watching people get rescued. We're seeing people brought in with all the needs, seeing animals brought in. So there's just a lot going on. I'm sorry my line beeped in right in the middle of your question. What was the rest of the question?
All right, I guess they're talking about coming up with a package to aid the state. And, you know, your name came up, sir, because I know you were against originally the Sandy aid package that, you know, got the likes of New Jersey Governor Chris Christie criticizing you and other members at the time for rejecting that, but apparently open to this. How do you answer that?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty easy, Neil. I was never against Sandy aid. Being from the Texas Gulf Coast, I've lived here 64 years. I started with Hurricane Carla. I've been through a lot of hurricanes and fully.
But you did vote against it, did you not?
I did, and the reason is because they had put things on the bill that I felt needed to be a standalone appropriation. I had that conversation with leadership.
I see.
Neil, I was very upfront with all of my colleagues. I said, look, I can't vote for that. You put it in one single standalone, I'm good to go. But when you start loading it up with anything, you know, I think we ought to vote on the merits. If you check my voting record, you'll see that I voted against every CR and every omnibus save one. And that was because it lifted the oil embargo December 2015, which is huge for all of our ports and our energy district. So I've been pretty consistent about it. I've been pretty upfront with my colleagues, had a lot of thoughtful discussion with them.
But what if the only way, and by the way, you were not the only one who did so. I mean, Speaker John Boehner at the time had said that was his biggest problem with that better than $60 billion Sandy package. It wasn't only for Sandy, and it was earmarked for other things that he thought were offensive. So you were not alone with that. But Congressman, let me get your take on a measure they are apparently cooking up now that would be attached to a hike of the debt ceiling that would include funding for this sort of thing, funding for aid, and might include funding for a wall. In other words, it would all be lumped together to get the debt ceiling increased. How would you feel about that?
Well, of course, you're dealing with hypothetical. We'll see what comes to us when we get back. I've always been opposed to increasing a debt ceiling without some kind of a trade-off where we can cut spending, help cut the deficit. So, you know, we'll have to see what they bring up with and take it step by step.
All right. Now, what I wondered about here, and you harken back to the Sandy example here, that was originally started, I think, and refresh my memory, Congressman, as a $10 billion aid package that ultimately, you know, grew to $60 billion plus. Clearly not all for just Sandy aid. And I'm wondering whether the same temptations might exist here on the part of your colleagues to put together a rescue measure or a relief measure for Texas that will hide a lot of other goodies. If it does, but included in that package is all the aid that Texas would need. Would you vote for that?
Well, again, you're dealing with hypotheticals. It would depend exactly what all those other measures are, Neil. And don't discount the fact that the hurricane, now tropical storm, I guess Depression Harvey, is taking dead aim on Louisiana. And so we're going to have to see when it's all said and done and all the flooding is over and everything's drained. It'll take weeks, if not a month or better. You know, our focus on saving lives, getting people out, getting them to shelter and housing, getting them back to some normalcy. And then we'll come back and say, okay, what does that look like? What's it going to cost? Who all is involved? Who was affected? What's the price tag and how are we going to manage that? Once we get all of this behind us, take care of our citizens first, make sure all that's done, and we'll start looking at the dollars.
All right, Congressman, thank you very, very much. Congressman Randy Weber of Texas.